This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
On this week's programme, we discuss the scandalous issue of multiple pensions and government employees receiving their salary for the current job while they also receive a pension from their previous one.
Excuses? We're all fed up with excuses. We've been listening to excuses for years. So we're doing some good work here. And I hope the political will and the pressure from the public opinion and the people will be enormous in order to help us go through with all these reforms.
And several bills are going to be put before Parliament to try and address these thorny issues.
If prior to elections, someone might be giving the message that I'm entitled to this pension but I'm not receiving, after the election, he might just change this. That's why I'm telling that we don't have to go just with one specific proposal, one bill. It can be a combination.
We're going to talk now about an issue that has been boiling on and off for several years, and that is multiple pensions. It seems that many of our officials in Cyprus continue to get pensions after they retire from one job, even if they're getting salaries for a current government job. Irini Haralambidis is an MP who fights corruption and I think unfairness, Irini, isn't it? This does seem very unfair when we have pensioners who are finding it difficult to make ends meet, and then we hear about MPs, former ministers and so on getting not just a salary for the job they're doing now, but sometimes 2, 3 or even 4 pensions. What's happening in Parliament? What are the MPs saying about this? Because several MPs fall into that category, don't they?
Yes, I know, but we have to make a clarification. It's one thing discussing about multiple pensions, and it's another thing discussing about the pension you get when you retire from your position in the government and you take over as an official. So let me make this clarification first. I'm proposing a bill that targets the multiple pensions of officials who have served in various governmental positions, aiming to impose a progressive tax structure on those who receive multiple pensions or particularly high pension payments. A breakdown of what I'm proposing with some refinements and suggestions to clarify the approach. First, the bill will specifically apply to individuals who have served as officials in various government posts. For example, ministers, central bank governors, MPs.
Mayors.
This could include elected officials, appointed officials, and other high-ranking government employees who qualify for pensions from multiple sources. This bill is focused only on those who receive multiple pensions, okay, from their various positions in the government. Let me be clear about this. So, I propose a threshold of 70,000 euros, above which the combined pension payments would be subject to much higher taxation. Any amount over this 70,000 threshold will be taxed by 70 to 90% tax, and that means that there are no constitutional issues because we give the money and then we take it back by taxation.
Isn't it a lot easier, Irini? And to me it seems simpler and more clear and transparent just to say, if you've had more than one government job and you get a pension from one of them, you can keep the highest pension and you don't get any others. It's just simple.
No, actually you cannot do that because the court has already decided. And the court decided in 2014, saying that this is property, the pension is property of the owner, and you cannot take it away. So we look into it, and we try to find another way to do it, and the taxation was the only way. And by that, we prevent the accumulation of overly large pensions for a single individual while contributing to public resources.
Well, I suppose
That's the only way to do it.
I suppose that means really if we want to make it easy, simple and change the constitution. It's interesting, isn't it, that judges are included in some of the people who are getting multiple pensions.
Trust me, it's a very complicated issue, and we put a lot of thought into that in order to find this way to go. In order to ensure fairness and prevent the accumulation of excessive pension wealth by a small group of officials. Now, over and above that, me and other 3 colleagues, we have tabled several proposals related to pensions and the retirement age of government officials. And I am confident that this proposal fall within constitutional limits. The extension of the retirement age from 60 to 65 for officials using a methodology similar to prior government reforms on semi-economic issues aligned with broader policy changes. And for example, I have already mentioned, we increased the retirement age of officials from 60 to 65. We ensure that the proposal aligns with the Constitution. This is very crucial, as the retirement age adjustment must be consistent with labor laws and rights protection, and we are trying not to violate any constitutional guarantees. Otherwise, problems are coming. The methodology that we use for these reforms mirrors those adopted by the government after 2013 haircut. So I think we will be within limits. Of course, political will, Rosie, is needed above all.
Well, and political will seems to be lacking because the very people who are expected to pass this are the people who are benefiting from it.
Well, yes, I agree with you. And that's why for many, many years now, I was listening to excuses like it's unconstitutional and the court decided, and nobody was looking to find another way to go for it. So that's exactly what we did. We looked for another way. That's why we introduced the high taxation. Excuses, we're all fed up with the excuses. We've been listening to excuses for years. So we're doing some good work here. And I hope the political will and the pressure from the public opinion and the people will be enormous in order to help us go through with all these reforms.
Now, did I understand what you were saying, that is that government employees retire 5 years earlier than the general population?
Yes, that's the case today. The retirement age is 60, not 65.
While everybody else has to work until they're 65 and then they get a paltry pension on which to try and survive.
Yes, but Rosie, let's be fair about something, okay? When you run for MP, for example, you give up everything you have built up by the moment. For example, if I talk about myself, because I don't want to use another colleague's name, this is my only, I'm focusing only on my MP profession. So whatever I was doing before that, it's gone.
But that's true of any, Irini, just a minute, that's true of any job. If I give up one job and take another one, then I give up whatever I did before. Yes, and the MP's salary isn't measly.
No, you can't. I cannot have any benefits from my older job. And also, you take on SMP for a limited time. Nobody knows if he or she is going to get re-elected in 5 years. Nobody knows if this will be on for 5, 10, or 15 years. So you take a huge risk. And when you are hired by a company or a law firm with a limited contract, then you understand that on this contract, the provision for high bonuses is included because it's limited offer. So when you serve to a public, when you give up everything you build up in your life to serve for 5, 10, or 15 years, then you know that you cancel everything you've done and you take a huge risk.
Okay, but let's talk, if we may, about the number of people in Parliament and indeed in government positions who are getting a salary, which is a very considerable one in some cases, plus pensions or benefits from their previous jobs.
Well, there was a huge issue about the president who is getting the presidential who's getting about 150,000, 160,000 per year as president, and then he also gets his pension of 1,100 euros for retiring as a public official from the Ministry of External Affairs. This is one case that's been a lot discussed. Like this case, many others. But I repeat, my proposal deals with officials that at the moment they get multiple pensions and they add up these pensions to an amount of 13,000, 14,000 per month.
Yes, it's a lot of money. And the other thing was this idea of a waiver, and that people could say, OK, I won't take the pension I'm entitled to because I'm getting a salary or whatever. That seems to be a little bit pie in the sky. I know that one or two people have done that, or at least they've given it to charity, but it's very few, isn't it?
Of course, yes. And I think that it's based on ethical issues. When you serve, you have to give up on this right, because it's a provocation to have both. I mean, if it was me, I would have done that. And I know colleagues and ex-presidents that they have done that. Some others, they prefer to keep on and getting this pension over and above what they get as president or as MPs or ministers. For me, it raises huge ethical issues.
I think it does for the general population and for voters. I'm quite surprised that this isn't more in the public eye when it comes to elections. So we could choose the people who are actually benefiting to the detriment, let's face it, of the general population, because if we weren't giving these huge government salaries to so many people and the pensions that were from previous jobs, we could perhaps spare the money to up the pensions of the poorer members of our society.
Exactly. We have to think of the provocation that these arrangements are for society. But as I said, it's up to the ethics of each one of us.
Now, this is coming before Parliament, I think. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, is there a general agreement with your view, or are a lot of people holding out?
Well, actually, when we tabled the 6 proposals, we had to deal with a lot of things in the Parliament, but I think there is no way out. Some of us are really pushing hard. So there is not a way out, because elections are coming and everybody will be afraid of the high political cost that will be at stake if they back down.
Irini Haralambidou, very good luck with your work in Parliament, and we will watch with interest and perhaps name and shame all of those people who are getting government salaries at the same time as pensions for their previous posts. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
And staying with that issue of multiple pensions, we're joined by Greens MP who sits on the Finance Committee in our House of Representatives, Stavros Papadouris. Stavros, just been talking to Irini Haralambidou. I know you're a signatory of one of her bills that's going towards the Parliament, but you have also, I think, your own ideas about how we should tackle this idea that people can get multiple pensions. The floor, as they say in a debate, is yours.
Good day, Ms. Haralambidou. Okay, just to be clear from the beginning, in this attempt, unfortunately, we have some basic restrictions, meaning what? During other attempts from previous members of the Parliament, when they change some bills about multiple pensions, we had two cases leading to court cases against the Cyprus democracy, meaning one in 2014 and one in 2016. Unfortunately, the result of these decisions put us some limitations concerning the constitutional part of any attempt that we might have now. So basically, we have different approaches at the moment. We have 6 bills that we do co-sign with Mrs. Haralambidou. At the same time, we have another proposal from Mrs. Haralambidou that is referred to a heavy taxation over and above the amount of 70,000 euro as a result of a multiple pension. At the same time, we have another approach from two other political parties, and at the same time, it seems that we are going to be having from the government a similar approach as well, that indicates a person that is entitled to a multiple pension voluntarily to refuse this pension just by making a declaration when being elected or when being appointed, just to sign a declaration whether he will be getting this pension or not, and this declaration to be published so that people would know as well. This will help, of course, what we call as a name and shame.
And Stavros, just a minute. As far as I'm aware, only 2 people have done that. And when we look at the dozens that are getting all these pensions, it doesn't seem that relying on people's ethics has a very high take-up rate.
Correct. I mean, let's be clear about this. No one is stopping anyone at the moment, without any legislation, just to make a declaration and inform the government that I do not wish to benefit from a second or third person. Anyone can do it now, and as correctly you said, we had one person that already made this declaration, so any amount coming from a multiple pension is going back to the government.
Well, can I just interrupt you there and say, let's name these people. And one is Onufrios Koula, I believe, a former civil servant who is currently an MP for DC. And the other is DC's former leader, Averos Neophytou. Now, he hasn't actually waived those pensions, but my understanding is that he gives those funds to various different charitable organisations. Is that correct?
That is very correct. We have other cases in the past as well. You will see former director of central bank, former ministers, and so on, that also applied the same method. But allow me to say this. I don't believe that this is the correct method. I mean, concerning Mr. Onufrios Koulas, yes, this is the correct way. You make a declaration and you give back this money to the government, and the government will decide to put them in a special fund or whatever. But to have the ability to receive this money and decide yourself where to donate this money, I believe it's another story. I cannot put them in the same category. So, at the moment, we have different approaches, and my understanding is that we don't have to put one approach against the other unless necessary. What I mean now, because we have this restriction of some constitutional matters, I believe that if we vote, let's say, for the one that we co-signed with Mrs. Haralambidou, if this bill will pass, at the same time, there is no restriction on passing also the other bill that refers to the taxation. It's not like we have to choose between one or the other. Or even further, we can even vote for the one that we just mentioned about this refusal of receiving this pension, because at the end of the day, it's like one is completing the other. So we have the ethical part, which is the name and shame, plus for this information to be published towards citizens, it's good for them to understand who had the right and who has refused from this right.
And who is doing a public job for the money?
Of course. But look, there are some details that we have to be focused on this bill also, because as we were informed on Monday by the Ministry of Economics that completed this bill, you have the right, someone will be having the right to refuse from this pension and give this declaration, but at any moment he can, let me put it like this, take back his signature and start benefiting again at any given moment. So I believe this is not the best way to do it, because as you understand, if prior to elections someone might be giving the message that I'm entitled to this pension but I'm not receiving, after the election he might just change this. That's why I'm telling that we don't have to go just with one specific proposal, one bill. It can be a combination, and at the end of the day, if the government will believe that there are some unconstitutional subjects, then they can come back to us and we will try to change anything that is considered unconstitutional. That's why I think that now we have to have an open horizon, examine all the approaches, and at the end of the day try to find the correct formula, because Ms. Haralampou, one way or the other, there is the political will, and this is what we need in order to finish with this situation. Something that is being, I don't want to call it unethical, but it has been so much challenging. People just imagine that there are people receiving, after 40-something years of working, they are receiving a pension of €700, and you have cases of people, ex-ministers and so on, receiving 12, 13, 14, 17,000. I believe we need to put a full stop, find the correct formula, and continue with the correct procedures.
Well, I think everybody would surely agree with you, apart perhaps from the ministers, the government commissioners, several of them, and some MPs who are benefiting from this.
I believe that this is where the name and shame comes into, because especially for people that have been elected or they might try to be elected in the future, we need to know what is their position, their clear position on this subject. But again, I'm just telling that we have to be very, very careful on what we are going to vote, not to cause another incident going to the Supreme Court, because as I'm telling today, we are restricted by the two previous decisions from the Supreme Court. If a third incident might happen, and we will not manage to proceed with this bill in a constitutional way, a new attempt, perhaps after some months or after some years, will have three negative decisions that will limit even more. That's why I'm telling, let's have an open horizon. Let's try to get as much information as we can. Let's be realistic with the limitations that we are having, because the actual purpose is to find a constitutionally correct way and implement this way.
And let's just be clear as well, as I mentioned to Irini when I was speaking to her, some judges or former judges fall into the category we're talking about, don't they?
Yes, look, Ms. Haralampou, it's a big category. Believe me, it's a big category that benefits at this time. Just to give you an indication, I forwarded a question to the Minister of Economics, asking him how many people are benefiting today from these multiple pensions. I got a written reply. It's the amount of 30 individuals. But believe me, after some time it could be 35, 40 and so on. It's quite a wide range of category. And there is no limitation in this. There is no limitation.
And we should mention, should we not, that at least the finance minister, as far as I know, has filled in his wealth declaration, which a lot of other people haven't, and he is one of the people who is getting not only his salary as finance minister, but also pensions. I think they amount to more than €4,000 for his past service as a minister and as a civil servant.
That is very correct, but please, let's not confuse something. Mr. Gravnos or any other minister or any other person that is receiving perhaps a second or a third pension, on one hand we have the pension that is coming as a reward from being a minister, but there is a certain type of pension that is called the professional pension, that someone could benefit from it because he was a public servant, let's say in the Ministry of Economics or the Ministry of Internal Affairs or in a governmental position. That is another story, because this is money that this individual was placing in a special fund. Our objection with this thing, this person is allowed to have a secondary, let's say, pension, but he is supposed to have this only when he will reach the age of 65, not at the age of 40, 45, because at this age he was elected, so he's living from the governmental position that he holds, and this fund is immediately activated as a pension. And the question is raised, if I'm in the public sector, I can work for 35, 38 years, perhaps, touch wood, I will not reach the age of 65, so I will never benefit from all the money that I have placed in my business pension. So we don't have any objection that someone should benefit for every single year that he has worked in his life, but just to be fair with everybody, this has to be activated at the retirement age, no matter if this is the age of 60, 65, 57, or whatever that is going to be.
Well, and that applies, does it not, as well to people in the private sector? If you have a pension fund that you've been putting into, then if you want to cash it in, you get less, as far as I know. But if you want to wait until retirement age, you get the full amount.
That is correct, but here we are talking about a special, let me explain like this. If there is a governmental servant, he is putting social insurances like everybody in order to get his pension at the age of 65, like everybody else, but they have a special fund that you are also adding some extra money in this fund from your salary in order to cash it out. And here is where the problem, to cash it out when the legislation says when you will stop working for the government. Our suggestion is that because we are talking about the governmental sector, this has to be cashed out exactly when all other pension plans are cashed out. And that is exactly the day that someone is fully retiring at the age of 65 or 60 or whatever is provided in the legislation.
Are you confident that this will go through?
I'm positive, but I cannot be confident unless we continue with the sessions in the Ministry of Finance, because we are still waiting from the General Justice to give a feedback concerning each bill separately in order to understand whether we are going to pass something, and this will end up in the Supreme Court with a negative result. We want to avoid this thing. That's why I'm telling that now is the time to deal with this subject realistically, having all the data in front of us, because the worst thing is to pass something that will be considered as unconstitutional, and at the end of the day, it's like you are cheating people. It's like you are passing something that will not be implemented. And as a result to this, any future discussion will be negatively affected by a third decision from the Supreme Court. That's why I try to be realistic. I'm not trying to keep everybody happy. I'm just explaining my own position, Ms. Haralambous. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible, because my idea is to find the correct way to pass and implement something without giving the right to anyone to appear in court after 2 years and to try to cause a problem in this new supposed deal.
Stavros Papadouris, he's a Greens MP, sits on the Finance Committee. Many thanks for your time and your opinions.
Thank you.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.